welcome to Motormouth, brought to you by the Boyertown Museum of Historic Vehicles. I'm Kendra Cook.
I'm Dan Olson.
And we are back here in the beautiful Reading Diner after our time over at the park for our 54th Duryea Day. So thank you all for joining us over there. Now we're back home this month.
We are.
So, and we have a lot to cover this evening. I don't even know if we'll fit it all in, so
we better
get right on the stick.
We better have some spare time because I have a bowl of chili here in
That's
front of me
right.
too.
Yeah, give it time to cool now.
Yeah.
So, but before we head into our topics tonight, if you want to visit us here at the museum, we'd love to see you. The address here is 85 South Walnut Street in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. The museum is open 7 days a week, 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. We are closed major holidays. We do have a few of those coming up now this time of year. So Thanksgiving Day, the museum will be closed, but we will be open the next day on Friday, and then we're open that whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's a really great time if you've got family in. Bring them to the museum. It's a great way to get out of the house and do something with the family from out of town. So that's Thanksgiving, as we have another show before then, but just so you can plan. Christmas time's also coming up. We will be closed Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. But again, we're open that whole week in between. So another great time for when people are visiting to come over and visit the museum. And we got some great things here on loan to us.
Sorry.
Tisk, tisk. We've got great stuff on loan to us right now here at the museum. We're going to meet one of those vehicles a little later in this program. We'll get to that later. And we also have a collection of pedal cars on display. So it's a really neat time to come out and see what we've got here. Of course, we'll have some blacksmithing going on too in our carriage factory on Saturdays. So great time to visit the museum. If you want to contact us, you can give us a call at 610-367-2090 or visit our website, www.boyertownmuseum.org. Or, of course, you can find the museum and Motormouth, the show, on Facebook, which gets updated pretty regularly. So find us one of those ways. We'd love to see you these coming months. And I'm going to hand it over to you, because we're going to go on the Wayback Machine, I think.
We will be, but I do have a question for you. A couple of weeks ago we had Diner Day, a week and a half ago. Pretty successful, huh?
We did. For those of you at home that joined us for Diner Day.
Millions of people.
Thank you. Sort of.
Okay. No, it was a good crowd.
We
had a really good group here.
That was one of the busiest Diner Days we've had. I think it was the second busiest of all the ones we've done. We had a little over 400 people here. So that was awesome. Thank you. If you came out and joined us, thank you so much. It was a great event.
Yeah, it's just fun. It's just kind of a relaxed event, and you don't have to worry about the rain if it's raining.
That's true. It's all indoors. You don't have to worry.
Indoors. It's fun.
Yeah,
and
it
some
was
good pie
great.
food. I got a piece this time.
Did you get a piece?
Oh yeah. Good stuff.
We were a little worried back there in the kitchen that we wouldn't have quite enough pie, but we managed. We did good. So thank you everyone for coming out and joining us. The next one will be in April, so get ready.
Okay.
We've got a lot to live up to on April's.
Yeah. My birthday.
We set the bar high, that's right. See, you've got to come and have a slice for Dan's birthday.
Okay, so are we ready to hit the road?
Oh, we had to travel outside the diner, huh?
Yeah, not real far.
Going way back. All right, well, we'll catch you in a bit. So we just moved our 1912 SGV back in the museum, and that was pretty good timing for you, wasn't it, tonight? Because here we are.
It was a surprise because I walked in here and I was not expecting that here, so it was kind of a bonus.
I could just read your mind that you wanted to talk about this car.
That's scary.
I know, it is kind of scary, actually.
Okay.
So what are you going to tell us about this car?
I came across in a magazine, Motor Age from 1917, which is 101 years ago.
Aww.
And there's a list here. It says orphan car parts makers. Okay, and the following is a list of 241 cars which are no longer produced by the original manufacturers. Name and address of the concerns with finished parts. Anyway, so in 1917, these organizations decided there's a big field out there. All these car companies, all these little car companies all over the place are closing. And I've come across advertisements in the past, and they'd have like an advertisement that says, you know, write to this company for car parts for your SGV, for instance, okay? And they would have car parts. And it just made me investigate this a little more, especially when I came across an article about these companies out there. It was a whole business. It just was, I thought it was pretty neat, so it gives me a chance to share it with everybody else. So one of these cars, before I get into these companies, one of them that was on here was Chadwick. Made it down the street here in Pottstown. And if you wanted parts from them, you go to Chadwick Engineering Works. So apparently they were still in business after they closed. And I figured they closed in 1916, this was 1917, so they probably were selling the last
of their stock.
Yeah, okay. But usually what would happen is a company would go in and buy all of the, pretty much buy the company, whatever they had, and then ship it out and resell it. It's called the orphan car business. So they use orphans, and these companies actually call their businesses orphanages, and I thought that was interesting. And anyway, I came across some stuff from two magazines, the Horseless Age from 1917 and the Motor Age from 1917. And they have quite extensive advertisements and stuff. So the orphan car business, basically, as I said, it would live on buying defunct car companies and then selling leftover parts. But eventually, they ran out of parts. So they actually manufactured brand new parts. Okay, and we're going to talk about a couple companies there in a moment or two. But these companies would have foundries, machine shop, forges, everything would come, you know, brand new stuff.
Yeah, so I guess they would also be buying the patents.
They would buy everything, lock, stock, and barrel.
So and, they can now manufacture these parts.
Yeah, so you could go and you could get brand new unused parts, and they said possibly better than the originals, okay? And as you said, they would buy everything. They'd buy
blueprints.
The blueprints, just anything they had. They would just, I guess, purchase the entire contents. And you figure for a bankrupt company, you know, the shareholders of that company probably, sure, go ahead, buy it. It's the only way we won't lose as much money.
Yeah.
So, anyway, there are four companies I'm going to talk about briefly here. Puritan Machine Company out of Detroit, Standard Motor Parts Company out of Detroit, Auto Parts Company out of Chicago, and American Auto Parts Company out of Philadelphia. Those four companies were the biggest. In 5 years, excuse me, they had a 700% growth. So they really went, and 2002 annual sales was like $400,000, and they had 51 employees. 1917, 5 years later, and they were getting close to $3 million with over 400 employees. So they were really growing. So I'm going to talk about two of them. And the Auto Parts Company out of Chicago is the first one. 1907, they began in a basement of a house. Okay. Next year, they moved to a small store and just rented the first floor. The year after that, took the second floor and adjoining space. So they were just growing and growing. 1912, this is 5 years after they started, they had 25 workers and 12,000 square feet. In 1914, 2 more years, they have stores, offices, stock rooms, and shops. So they were just really a booming business back then. And also in 1914, they erected their own building, 7 stories. Everything was in there. 1916, they were up to 102 workers. 1917, it says recently, so I assume that means 1917. Added warehouses in Minneapolis, Kansas City, and the East. I don't know where the East meant. That was for exporting things. So it was a big business. And in 1917, they were expected to do $1 million worth of business. And they also had a new system of handling orders that was incorporated so that the order is not delayed more than 1 hour from the time it is received until it's shipped. Now, you buy stuff online here, and it's almost like the second you hit buy now, it's already halfway to your home.
Yeah.
I mean, things are really quick.
There's already someone in the warehouse getting it out.
They were doing quick here. Now, obviously, it was slower to actually do the shipping, once it got out the door, but I thought that was quite impressive here, and that's the Auto Parts Company of Chicago, which I think was the third largest. We're also going to talk about the Puritan Machine Company, which was the first one, and that's out of Detroit. It started with a guy named A.O. Dunk.
Puritan companies out of Detroit?
Yeah. Why? Did you think it would be like Boston?
Yeah, something.
Okay. A.O. Dunk. I had to look him up. I found him online, but nothing really. He had a small machine shop, 50 by 75 feet, and that was in 1912. A year later, he opened a brand new 2-story building. So he's growing. 1914 and 15, he kept increasing things. 1916, another new building for machine work and storage of larger parts. 1917, when the magazine was written here, it was parts for 107 different cars, different makes. Now, this was the biggest company here, and I have some quotes from them too, and I'll cover that in a moment. In 1917, also several hundred employees, several hundred. So they, in the past few years, this was a quote from 100 defunct automobile companies have been purchased in the past few years, including drawings, tools, jigs, dies, etc. So they would buy everything. Mail order business was one of the largest in the country. Also foreign mail orders. And I have some advertisements. They're not really that exciting to show you on screen, but I can just read them to you. And it's just a bunch of words here. But anyway, for the Puritan Company, there's rear axles, front axles, radiators, motors, 4 and 6 cylinder, motors, demountable wheels, generators. They had Ford specials where you get seat covers and roofs, speedometers, fenders, on and on and on, every part you want. Now Ford, I just mentioned that was not a defunct company, but this was making brand new parts for Ford. And in fact, they even made bodies for cars, for certain cars. And I'm thinking, I looked that up, but couldn't find anything there.
Darn.
Yeah, well, it's not that bad.
Keep working on it.
Yeah, okay. The lighting, generators, and so on and so forth. And it was pretty interesting, And again, this is something I knew companies were buying old stock, and I thought, well, that's it. But I didn't realize it was such a huge business. Now, what can I go here? There are, with Puritan, remember I said I came across a couple lists of the orphan car makers, car parts makers, yeah. And I went down and I checked, okay, what cars that we have in this museum kind of fit into here. And I looked them up, and this list here, it has all the makers plus the different companies that service or made parts for it. And Puritan cars, there's the Acme, which is right there. So when that went out of business, you need parts for it, you can go to Puritan. That was one of them. Adam Arnold out of Reading was another. Couldn't find anything about him, but Puritan.
Arnold.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Puritan did Acme. It also did the Dragon, which we got one down there. The Middle B, which we got one over there, and SGV. We got two of them, this red one and the white one behind me. Okay? Now, here's where it gets, hopefully, it would have gotten interestinger.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, this is quotes. This is out of the magazine article from 1917. When a car owner writes to the Puritan Company, he receives a card by mail with a number of blank spaces and instructions for filling them. The card filled in and returned to the company is kept as a perpetual index and bears the owner's name, make of car, address, car number, year manufacturer, and the various nameplates on it. When he receives the necessary parts, the motorist also secures a metal tag bearing the name of the Puritan Company and informing all who read it that parts for the car to which it is attached can be purchased from them. The tag works in an endless chain method. Anyone who purchased the car always has before him the information stating where spares can be secured.
Oh.
Okay. So when I came here tonight, the first thing I did, I went and checked these cars. And I'm assuming on the firewall of these cars would be this little plate. Now the firewall in these cars is wood, so you just, nail it on there. None of them have it though.
Darn.
But I'm thinking, wouldn't that be, that'd be so cool. And when these cars were restored, however many years ago it was, they said, this isn't an SGV thing. They just tore it off and threw it away. But it's kind of an interesting story to think like, this headlight could have come from Puritan.
And did Puritan, I'm sure, have all these paper records of all those people that bought? Like, what happened to them?
Well, let me continue here, okay?
I'm reading your mind again.
No, not really. Okay. Immediately after purchasing the parts of a defunct motor car concern, the Puritan Company sends cards by mail to every owner of that particular make of car on record, informing him where he may look for all needs for his machine, even though the maker of the car no longer does business. So if you you bought this car new and a year later it goes out of business, you would get a letter from Puritan say, hey, we got parts if you need them. And so then you, as the owner of this car, would, say, yeah, I need a whatever.
Yeah.
And they would send you this card to fill out and stuff. Your name would stay on record. Now, just last night, I went online, was typing thing. I'm sure you go through the same thing. You think you got all this information?
Yeah,
okay,
no.
I got the whole story here. Well, you go back on and there's more stuff pops
exactly.
up. And there was a forum, it might have been AACA, but it doesn't make any difference. And they were talking about AO Dunk. And it wasn't really much. I mean, I already knew about it. But what came up, they said the Detroit Free Public Library might have Puritan records. And I'm thinking, that would be, so it'd be neat if we saw the plate on the car.
Yeah.
And then you go and
That'd be cool.
find the history of who bought the car original and stuff. But, that was 10 o'clock last night. I was on the phone half the night.
Yeah, we only had so much time.
And, well, yeah, but, it's a great story, and it's just like, okay,
There's still more to uncover.
We have these cars, and they're pretty much factory, came from the factory, but there's always neat stuff out there. So
keep digging.
So that's it.
There's always more to learn.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So.
Well, maybe we'll have to take a road trip to Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit. I see one of the road trip people out there. I see a thumbs up already. Get your Fagley shirt ready. Okay, and that's it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, well, these are orphan cars. We're going to go to a non-orphan car.
Right.
But we're going to go visit with one of our cars that's here on temporary display. So let's go over and check it out.
Okay.
Okay, well, our guest this evening is Doug Walters. Doug, thank you for being here tonight. I know you had a little bit of a drive.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Doug's here because this is his really awesome World War I truck. Now, we were very lucky this year this is the third World War I vehicle that we've been able to display this year. Of course, this year is the 100th anniversary of World War I. You folks might remember the Packard truck that we had at the Duryea Day special. That truck was here in the museum for a little bit before Duryea Day. And now we're very lucky. Doug brought his 1918,
yes,
correct, Dodge for us to show this year, and we're really thankful for that. So thank you, Doug, and we're excited to learn more about this truck.
Thank you.
And it's not a Dodge, is it?
Dodge Brothers.
Dodge Brothers. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
the body style is called light repair truck.
Okay.
It was a tool truck that was used to fix anything that went wrong on the battlefield. There's no electrical system. There's magneto, it's hand crank only. The cow lights are kerosene. There's an acetylene spotlight that goes on the dash. And there's a acetylene generator.
Now you said it could repair anything on the battlefield. Now, I'm used to seeing vehicles that could go to a battlefield, okay, which would be a lot more rugged than this, you know, four-wheel drive and fat tires and everything. Obviously, this is not four-wheel drive.
Yep.
And has rather skinny tires to today's cars.
It does.
But it can go off-road a
It's
little
been
bit?
It's been
A little
off-road.
bit. Okay.
It'll go over. It has a lot of ground clearance.
Okay. Ground clearance, so...
If you've ever seen the video of the oil field Dodge,
Okay.
they
No, I
go
haven't.
through mud that's up over the hubs.
Really? Okay. So it was made to do that?
Yes.
So, okay. So is this based on a Dodge Brothers truck chassis or a car chassis or?
This is theoretically the first pickup that Dodge Brothers ever built.
Okay.
It's built on a commercial car chassis. Dodge Brothers was selling screen sides and panel trucks at that point. They took that chassis, which is similar to a car, has heavier springs, and they had Inslee, a company in Detroit, build the bed for the cabin chassis of Dodge Brothers.
Okay. So it was kind of a semi-custom thing.
Yes.
Actually, the body was probably per government specs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
They
Very
didn't, like,
specific.
invent it.
It's very heavy. It's 1/8-inch steel. Pretty rugged.
Yeah. Rugged is probably a better
Yes.
term that they use. So, okay. So, did it see action?
I don't
Action,
think
like-
so.
Okay.
There's 5 of these trucks known to exist yet in the United States. 2 of them are in military museums, including up at Boalsburg, Pennsylvania Military Museum. There's one in California, and there's 2 others in private hands besides mine.
Okay. Okay.
This one was used in service at Mount Gretna, which was a military reservation in World War I and later as a training center before Indiantown, before Indiantown Gap was bought and built.
I believe you said that they kind of outgrew
They did.
Mount Gretna, so for that Indian tank. Okay.
After World War I, they had tanks. They had artillery that would shoot too far for Mount Gretna.
Okay. Okay. Neighbors didn't like it either. I'm
Neighbors
sure.
didn't like it.
Is that the insignia then on the side over here, the PA?
Yes, it
28?
was originally used in the 28th Infantry Division, which
Okay.
is still the Pennsylvania National Guard that's
But now at the
housed
Gap.
at Indiantown Gap.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, like when we talk about World War II vehicles and like, you know, how all the car companies stopped making civilian and turned to wartime. I mean, how strict were they about that during World War I? Because it seems there's less World War I vehicles around, for sure.
They were required, the companies were required to build some military vehicles.
But not fully, I guess.
Not fully.
Okay.
We know the records show 1,012 of these being built And as I said, we know of 5 of them now that are still in existence.
Wow. Wow.
But
You mentioned 5, and you were telling me earlier that you knew of 4 of them, counting this one.
yes,
And it was because of a magazine article,
absolutely.
and the person didn't even know that's what he had.
Now, this person had bought the truck, was not familiar with it, did not know what it was, year even, he didn't get any paperwork with it. But because of a magazine article, he was able to determine that, you know, this is what he in fact owned.
So you're probably hoping there's other owners out there.
I hope so.
Or, and I thought of this too, but if there's others out there, it doesn't make yours as unique. You know, the uniqueness drops down a little bit.
They're all different in individual ways.
Okay.
The problem with Dodge Brothers is right from the get-go, right from 1914, they never had model year changes. They changed as they found an improvement,
Okay.
as it was needed, as it was designed. So our statement is, or our thought is, that there's no 2 Dodge Brothers that are the same.
Okay.
And we found that with these light repair trucks. They're not all the same.
Which probably drives you nuts if you wanted to
does.
restore something or fix something.
It does, but it's fun.
But you can't just call the other guy who has one and says, you know, I
We
need
argue
a-
about stuff all the time.
Yeah. Okay. And they're wrong every time, right? You're
Absolutely.
the correct one.
Absolutely.
So.
But like I said, with the paint, they came out of the factory. From our records, they came out of the factory in black. And they were painted green once they got to their service unit.
Oh.
So some of them, the frame may be black, may be green. The wheels, we argue about stuff all the time.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the wheels. Were the wheels painted also, or is that an
I think
argument
so.
point? Oh,
I think
okay.
they were.
Okay.
But someone went to a lot of trouble to strip these.
Yeah. They
And
look nice.
I can't get myself to paint them, even though they probably should be, according to the manual.
Okay.
But a few of the trucks don't follow the manual.
Okay.
The one in Bollesburg has a windshield. It has electric start. I believe it has headlights. So there were modifications or changes, design changes, as they went along.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the one in Bollesburg has a windshield. Now, I'm looking at yours. Obviously, it does not. But I see little connectors on the top of the cowl there. So I guess you could put a screen up to
Oh, no,
protect
that's
you.
the best part.
Oh.
I don't have it made yet.
Oh, okay.
That's foul weather gear.
Oh, foul weather gear.
It's canvas.
Okay.
It attaches to the pins on the front
Uh-huh.
and down the side. It comes up around your neck and attaches to the roof.
Oh my God.
The only thing that sticks out is your face.
Okay.
And I will have one of those very soon.
All right. How very soon? Will this still be on display by the time it's done?
Probably
You
not.
Come in, give us a demonstration.
In a few months.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
neat. I have seen pictures, you know, like line drawings from back in that era,
Yeah.
people, and you know, that's neat. So it's pretty rugged. It does not look real comfortable to ride in.
It's not.
No, no heated seats in that thing.
No.
So,
That's
but
why
it
he
was.
needs his all-weather gear protector here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It also had side curtains too, just like a lot of the old roadsters and touring cars. There were canvas side curtains with isinglass in.
Right. Okay. But you say that it did have that.
It would have, yes.
Should have. Okay.
And in the manual, it tells you to fold those up and sit on them as your cushion.
Okay.
Now, how soft is canvas when you fold it over 2 or 3 times?
Yeah. Well, I guess softer than wood. You know, I don't know.
Not
Yeah.
much.
But it's just interesting, you know. You know, it's a military vehicle. You know, you weren't out for a joyride, so. But then again, you're off road, and well, the roads themselves weren't that great either back then. So.
No.
Okay,
Now-
now I was looking at this earlier, and you know, the front fenders have this nice flow to them, nice round. They follow the contour of the tire, but the rear fenders are very angular.
Yes.
And there's a story behind that, or a reason for that. What would that be?
Well, their secondary purpose, besides being fenders, is to be used as a workbench.
Okay.
You could clamp a piece of wood or metal that you were working on, clamp it to the top of the fender and use it as a workbench.
Okay. So, you know, it goes back to the repair truck designation of
Yes.
this, and there's one of your workbenches,
Yes.
as well as the tailgate, and so, and the tailgate's unique too, especially the vise on it.
It is.
Because you've never seen anything like that, or I've never seen anything like that. That's a unique thing. So,
Well, there's 5 boxes of tools that go with it. One is for carpenter's tools. There's machinist tools. One has all measuring devices, tape measures, and basically anything you would find in a hardware store would have been carried in this truck, including a chain fall.
yeah, you had to be ready for any emergency,
anything.
and yeah, if I was running a military vehicle out in the field and it broke,
Yes.
and you and this vehicle comes, you better fix it, you know.
We have video. Eisenhower's tour that he took in 1919 across country on the Lincoln Highway. We have video and written proof that there were at least 2 of these on that tour.
Okay.
And next year, the other car, staff car that's sitting back here, will be on that tour
Okay. Yeah.
for the full 3,000 miles.
For a full 3,000. Wow. Okay. So,
Now, going back to when you were saying you're having that other upholstered piece made,
Yes.
did you have these canvas tops made?
They were made by someone else, and I'm actually going to have them remade.
Okay.
I'm not satisfied with the way they were made.
Now, how do you go about making those? I mean, do you look at photos?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I found an antique car guy that has a sewing machine
We'll do that.
that can sew that heavy of canvas.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
and if I'm correct, if my memory serves me right, the Vintage Truck Magazine article, that truck that was in it,
Yes.
that has the original canvas on it?
It could. I'm not positive
Okay.
of that. That truck is in Connecticut.
Right. But that's a good template. Well,
It
no,
is.
it's not a good template because they're all different.
They're all a little different. Yes.
A little different.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Means they have character.
Yeah. So how did you come across this vehicle, and how did you acquire it?
Actually, in our Dodge Brothers Club newsletter, there was an article 15 or 18 years ago of Mount Gretna had bought this. It was used at Mount Gretna back in, I have known proof that it was used up until 31 at Mount Gretna. But there was an article that the Historical Society of Mount Gretna had purchased this from a private owner. And I pestered them for about 10 years trying to buy it from them. Until about 4 years ago, they decided to sell it to me.
Okay.
So it's always been in that area. I live not far from there.
Right.
And I still take it back for their events that they want it.
That's neat.
Yeah. I was able to take an individual that was born and raised in Mount Gretna. At 5 years old, in 1931, he rode in this truck with his father.
Okay.
And on his, I think it was his 94th birthday, I took him for a ride.
Okay.
Aw.
That was pretty interesting. too,
Yeah.
So.
Now, this was part of when the guard unit was at Mount Gretna.
Yes.
So did it leave their hands basically when they moved to the Gap? Is it kind of a
At some point-
casualty of that move?
I'm not sure exactly when, but yes, it did. It went into private hands. There was a retired Navy individual owned it, and he sold it to the Historical Society
Okay.
of Mount Gretna
Okay.
in around the 80s or 90s.
Wow. Now, do you have any photos of it from when it was being used at?
Actually, I do. When I display it, I always have a sign that I'm looking for photographs from Mount Gretna.
Yeah.
And this summer, I was at the Eisenhower farm,
Yes. Out in Gettysburg.
for the World War I event, and
Yep.
a guy said he had family photos. It turns out his great uncle was sitting on the running board of this truck in 1929.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So that's how I found out that it should have the Pennsylvania National Guard 28th Infantry logo on it,
Gotcha.
and I duplicated that from that.
Oh, so that was not on there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
And the hood numbers,
Yes.
General Pershing came up with hood numbers for World War I vehicles. The numbers that are on the photograph clearly did not follow General Pershing's mandate.
Okay.
So we think, and this is part of the argument, we think that the National Guard had its own numbering system.
All right.
So that's what I've
Okay.
duplicated here.
So the numbering and everything on here, you're basing off of the photographs that
Yes.
you've been able to find.
Yes.
But you're looking for more.
I'm looking
So if
for more.
anyone out there would have photos of this at Mount Gretna, let us know. We'll pass them on to you.
I know this truck was used, actually when Mount Gretna closed and Indian Town Gap was opened, they moved 350 buildings from Mount Gretna back to the Indian Town Gap. This truck was used in that process.
Wow.
Because the man that I took for a ride, his father was in charge of moving those buildings.
Oh, what a neat experience for him. And for
That
you,
would've been.
probably, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I would agree. It's amazing, you know, connecting with people like this picture of this person who sat on the running board in 1920
29.
29, and you know, him just coming up to you
Sure.
and saying, "Hey, by the way, I have a picture." I mean,
He had no interest in the truck. Their family had the photograph because his great uncle was in it.
right.
But it just so happened to have
The truck. in
my
it.
truck in it. Which is what I was looking for.
Okay. Do you drive this around much, or is it just special events like parades or things
A little
like that?
bit, a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Okay.
It's probably not legal
Okay.
because there's absolutely no lights on it,
Okay.
including a brake light, which is required even with antique plates. The brake light that's on, or the tail light, is kerosene,
Okay.
and I've never put kerosene in it, so
Okay.
it's probably not legal, but I do drive it
Okay.
on occasion. Usually to give kids a ride.
Yeah. Kids of all ages, or just little kids?
Usually little kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just neat. It's a neat artifact from 100 years ago. You know, you think
Yeah.
100 years.
100
and
years. It's
all-
100
everything
years
that's
old.
happened. Yeah. So.
You've got all the stuff too, like the hatchet and the canteens. I mean,
Actually, I'm just getting started.
well, I was gonna say, is that something you've been working on? Did these things come with it?
No, I've been collecting that.
So it's pretty stripped down.
There's a lot
sort of?
more to it.
Okay.
There's a lot more tools
Yeah.
that I need to procure. The manual gives descriptions. I think there were 5 different chisels.
Oh, jeez.
In military fashion, they overdid everything.
Yeah.
There's 25 of each size nuts. Of course, in fine thread, there's washers, cotter pins,
Yeah.
all types of stuff like that.
Well, like World War I's interesting to me too because it was like the edge of a new era. So you've got so many horses and horse-drawn things on the battlefield mixed with this kind of stuff. I mean,
Yes.
they really had to know how to fix everything.
Yes.
It's really amazing. Really.
Well, if you read articles about Eisenhower's tour across the United States, his convoy, he asked for volunteers that knew how to drive trucks. A lot of those guys didn't even know what a truck was,
That's true.
but they knew they didn't want to
True.
have KP or any other,
Yeah. They
so
better
they
learn.
volunteered, and they learned how to drive in the first 3 or 4 days,
Yeah.
and maybe a transmission.
That's true. I mean, who was driving in 1919? Probably.
Exactly.
Mostly, I would say, upper class
Yes.
people. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's a good point. Never thought of that. It's interesting. Interesting. What did we forget to ask about this truck?
I'll probably think of what I forgot as soon as the camera goes off.
Well, we really should urge all of you at home to really come out and see this. And there's another Dodge here, a Dodge staff car.
Staff car, 1918.
I'm sorry, Dodge Brothers. This is like the radiator thing. I'm gonna get.
Without the brothers, you would have never heard of Henry Ford.
You really should come out and see these two. And I say that really in all honesty because these are very rare. World War I stuff is very difficult to find. And we're lucky enough to have two in the building at the same time. So really come on out and check these two pieces out. They're really neat.
It's interesting because this past weekend, now today we're celebrating Veterans Day, but the real one is yesterday from when we're filming this.
Yeah, we're filming the
taping
day
this.
after Veterans
Yeah,
Day.
but
here.
thing is, you heard a lot about, honoring the veterans and stuff. And, oh, by the way, it was the 100th anniversary of World War I. And, there's a lot of public consciousness right now about World War I ending. And, that's why we have these here. And it's pretty neat. And so and they'll be here for a while, right? So.
Got some time, so
yeah.
come on out. The family's in town right about now, right? It's the holiday season.
Yep.
Come out and see these trucks. They're really something to see. We're very fortunate to have them, and we thank you, Doug, for letting us borrow it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, they look great. They were in the lobby. We just moved them out here to the gas station today, so.
Yeah, I panicked when I walked in
Did
because
you?
they were out there. Oh no.
But now this beautiful background is here, so you really got to come out and see them, and they're just neat. So we're so thankful that you let us borrow them. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
So, and thank you for coming here this evening and talking to the folks at home. And
Sure.
I never even noticed the fenders in the back before, so thanks for pointing that out. Never noticed that, but makes total sense. So come on out, check all the details out we just talked about, and thank you, Doug.
Sure.
And we'll see you back in the diner.
Okay, so far tonight we've talked about like real old stuff. Okay, 1917, 1918. A lot of really interesting things, and there's so many interesting things to discover. And we're talking about to Doug, and he was coming up with some of the things he found and such. And after we were off camera, he came up with some more things, and it's just fascinating what is out there. And it's kind of interesting things. So
Always more to uncover.
We've always been discovering things. People call into the museum or visit us, or we go find it on our own and such. So that brings me to the point. You've been to any like cool places to make cool discoveries recently?
Well, those of you that watch the show regularly, you may have picked up on the fact that Dano goes to Hershey Fall Meet every year. Right?
Oh, yeah, I kind of briefly
drop a
mentioned
hint
yeah.
here and there.
332 days until Hershey.
And if you watch our other show on Berks Community Television, we even talked about it last month.
We did.
A little
Yep.
preview of it. But even though Dan's been there every year for we don't know how many years, I had never been there.
No.
Until this year. This was the first year that I went. Dan finally convinced me that I had to go. And it's actually kind of surprising I haven't been there yet because A, I'm here, I work here. And also, I lived in Hershey for a year, and for 4 years before that I lived in Annville, which is right down the road. So I was right there for a long time, and I didn't go. And I've done that drive so many times, I could probably do it in my sleep at this point. And when I was out there last month, I passed a landmark that I've always looked at with curiosity every time I drive out there, and I decided to try to dig up some information on it this time.
And you did, because I see
inspired.
text in front of me
I do.
here.
I found some, but not enough. I'm still looking.
Okay.
So, and I lived in Annville. It's because I went to Lebanon Valley College, and my best friend from high school, she actually also went to Lebanon Valley, and so we carpooled a lot when we went back and forth from home to school. And I remember the first time we drove home that freshman year, and she's my passenger, I'm driving, and we were almost at the Turnpike exit. We're on Route 72, right before the Lebanon-Lancaster exit. And she just says, "Oh, that place looks so cute." And I looked out the window, and she was right. It was Molly's Root Beer, and there's a photo of it there. And we talked about it. We're like, that looks so cute. We need to keep our eyes open for that. And, you know, it was fall, so Molly's Root Beer, that could be closed, right? It's a seasonal thing. It's just closed for the season. It's been closed for a lot of seasons. As I have found out, it was never open every time we drove by it. And it's funny, I texted her this morning, and I said, "Meredith, I'm talking about Molly's Root Beer tonight. Remember that?" She goes, "Oh my gosh, did you find anything out about it? Because I still want to go there." And, well, I found a little bit about it. And, you know, actually, that photo that I put up on there that you'll see, you know whose website that's from?
Yes. Retro Betty?
Yes, it's from Maud Betty's website.
Maud Betty.
Her photo was much better than mine. So thanks, Maud Betty. I'm using your Molly's Root Beer sign.
We have to have
photo.
her on. We have to have her back.
We're going to get her back, too. I agree. Maybe she can tell me more about Molly's Root Beer, because I couldn't find much. I Googled and I Googled and I Googled and didn't find too much. It's obviously abandoned, but it also kind of looks exactly the same last month as it did 16 years ago when I first saw it. So it's at least being somewhat maintained or looked after. So I found 2 items online that it's listed. So there's a geocache website, and I don't even know if geocaching or caching is a thing anymore, but that was kind of like all the rage a few years ago, and people would hide these little objects, and you'd have to find them using latitude and longitude coordinates. Anyway, so this is the description that came up. Welcome to Iron Valley 2, number 3, the road to Molly's. There are several approaches to this cache. How you choose will determine the overall difficulty. Check your map. The road you walked in on, or right below you, ran from Miners Village to the Overbrook Inn, located along Route 72. Molly's Root Beer store was right below it. It's closed now, but they made some of the best homemade root beer, and it tasted even better after the long bike ride on a hot summer day along the road to Molly's. Hope you enjoy the hike, and more stuff about the geocaching. That's one thing I found. The other is actually, Maud Betty had this on her site, and I see where she got it from. It was taken from something called the Mount Gretna email newsletter.
Mount Gretna.
We were just talking about
Yes.
Mount Gretna tonight. And actually, I did shoot off emails to the Mount Gretna Historical Society and the Mannheim Historical Society to see if they knew anything. I didn't hear back from them yet. Because this is, I think the address is Mannheim, but it's very close to Mount Gretna. It's just like on the other side of the road. So maybe someone there will know. This is what the Mount Gretna email newsletter says. Warren Meiske, whose mother still owns the building, this was in 2009, and sold homemade root beer, ice cream, and other summer treats there for years with her late husband, says there are no plans to do anything other than preserve the building. We are not planning to sell it or reopen for business, he says. Molly's began operating around 1925 and continued for nearly 70 years, says Mr. Meiske, who lives nearby and runs a spring water dispensing facility at the site. He believes that Molly's closed somewhere in the early 1990s. There's another photo here. This is actually like kind of the whole complex. There's a little like almost looks like a carport down there. I think that's where you go in to get your spring water down there. But anyway, that's really all I found out that I could find. Now, I did find a marriage license between a Richard Meiske, in the newspaper, was awarded Richard Meiske and Mary Herr in Lidditz. He was of Lidditz and she was of Mannheim, I think, and that was in about 1925, so I don't know if that's any relation. I tried to find obituaries for Mary Meiske. I thought maybe Molly was her nickname. I looked for Molly Meiske. I looked for this Warren Meiske because that was about 10 years ago that was written. Couldn't really find anything. So it's still a little bit of a mystery to me. If anyone knows anything about Molly's root beer, I'm curious now, and my friend Meredith and I really want to go there and buy root beer. So anyone that would like to make them an offer to buy the business and make root beer and ice cream again, we'd be all about that. But it sits, like I said, it's right by the Turnpike exit there on Route 72. It just looks like a cool, you know, the old-fashioned drive-up ice cream place. There's a place in Mount Gretna that's very popular that this reminds me of the Jigger Shop, it's called, and it reminds me of this. Like, it looks like that kind of a thing that you'd go and, you know, summer evening with your car, cruise in. I bet it had a lot of meat cars cruised in there back in the day.
I'm sure it did.
Lots of room for them. So, anyway, a relic of a bygone era. I wish I knew more about it. So the hunt continues, like you said.
And the hunt is fun.
It
right?
is fun.
Yeah, we mention that probably every show. We talk about
fun.
You know, looking for stuff, and you know what I found earlier, what I was talking about, and you know, A.O. Dunk, you know, looking for him.
Yeah.
And it is, and you never know that maybe one of our viewers does know something about it, and you know, they'll have something, or you know, the next
customer there.
Next diner day in April, by the way.
Yeah.
Somebody will come up to you and say, "Oh, you know, I saw the show about that Molly root beer place."
Maybe Warren's watching and he
Yeah.
can enlighten us.
So you never know.
You never know. And it's a neat building, and it's, like I said, it looks pretty much the same. So it looks like someone's at least doing some kind of, as they said in here, they want to preserve it, not operate it.
And I looked at your picture on the bottom there,
Yeah.
the second picture, and it's hard to see.
Yeah, it's kind of printed a little dark.
Almost kind of looks like a park.
Like a camp, sort of.
I was like a tourist camp, and I could just see, you know, little tourist cabins in there.
And that was very, Mount Gretna did, you know, that was a big area for that kind of thing. I could see this being a hopping place back in the day.
Well, all the National Guard guys would drive out.
They probably had a lot of root beer there. Maybe that truck was in that lot, getting root
could
beer
have
for
been.
the boy.
It could have been.
So actually, you know, we have some time left. We're not going to end in the diner tonight. You don't know about this.
That's right. This is a secret thing.
Secret segment. Dan has no idea how cutting edge he is, but he's about to find out.
Me cutting
yeah,
edge?
exactly.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to meet you at a case out in the gallery.
A case. Oh.
What are you doing?
A letter.
May I? Dear Dolores, sometimes you remind me of a house.
You know this is pathetic, right? Put this down.
The distance between us is breaking my spirit. Falling in love with you
Was the easiest thing I have ever done. P.S. Kiss the kids.
That's like clinging a cowbell at the end of Shostakovich's 7.
That's good.
It's perfect, Tony.
Come on, get out now. You never win with violence. You only win when you maintain your dignity.
You don't know your own people. You, Mr. Big Shot, doing concerts for rich people.
So if I'm not black enough, and if I'm not white enough, then tell me, what am I?
Anyone can sound like Beethoven. For your music, what you do, only you can do that.
What do we do about the bones?
We do this.
Pick it up, Tony.
Squirrels would have ate it anyway.
Pick it up.
So, Dan, like I said in the diner, did you know that we're on the cutting edge? here at the Boyertown Museum?
No. Well, I don't know.
So back in May of 2016, we did a segment on the show here about the Green Book.
Ooh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you need a little reminder, first of all, you could go to the PCTV Network's website and look up Bay 26 show and watch it. It's close to the beginning of the program. But quick recap. This was like an offshoot, I guess, of the Automobile Blue Book, which was a turn-by-turn directional book. And it had many different routes. You know, you'd buy a book for a certain region of the United States. And the books also included ads for different hotels or restaurants or garages along the way that you could use, you know, things that you would need if you're traveling. Well, the Green Book was published by an African-American man. His name was Victor Green. And this book was essentially doing the same thing, but it was specifically for African Americans. So this is the time of Jim Crow, segregation. So there were businesses that maybe would have advertised in the Blue Book that would not allow black customers in their doors. So the Green Book told them which businesses would allow them to patronize it, you know, which restaurants they were welcomed at, things like that. Which towns to avoid, things like that. Well, it was brought to my attention by the good folks at Pottstown Community Television that there is a major motion picture coming out this fall called Green Book.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like getting like good buzz, like sounds like it's going to be like a major deal. It's based on a true story about a black musician who hires a New York bouncer to be his chauffeur slash bodyguard during a concert tour he's taking of the South. So the musician, his name was Don Shirley. He was a jazz pianist, and I don't even know if jazz is the right way to explain him. He really, I was reading about him, he was a prodigy. He was born in Jamaica. He played his first concert at age 3. And I listened to some of his music on YouTube because I was curious. I had read that it was difficult to categorize, and I listened to it, and I agree with that. You can tell he's obviously very smart, but the music's like really out there. He had a top 40 single called Waterboy. You should definitely go YouTube that, and you'll find it. You can listen to it. It does not sound like anything that came out of 1962. It's very different.
That's when it would be is 62.
That, yeah.
Ish.
Well, his tour was in 1962, and that's when he was most popular. So about that time is when he came out with that song. You'll see it sounds like unlike anything you would think of as a pop song from that era. So go check him out. He's very interesting. But the movie's like getting like Oscar buzz. It opens in November. And I was reading too about the production that they announced they were making it in 2017. So I think it's obvious, Dan, that they watched us.
Oh, absolutely.
Got inspiration, right?
Yeah.
We are on the cutting edge.
That's the cutting edge part of it.
That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So it was just neat because I know it seemed like we were all kind of stunned by this, like it was a discovery for us.
Yeah.
And now it's like we see it in all these different places. I know we've seen it like for sale, reprints and things.
And the thing is, when we bring visitors here and explain this, they're
like shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's but you think about that time and it makes sense.
So it's going to be a major motion picture. I think we inspired it. Not really.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
But it's neat. So if you want to learn more about the history, we delved into a little more back in May 2016. Go check it out. I'm interested to see the movie. I'm just curious to see like a real life person's experience with that. And I'm sure, I would assume the book is mentioned at least in passing in the movie, if that's where the title comes from.
And what's the
Otherwise,
title
it would be
again?
very confused. It's just called Green Book.
Okay.
So I just thought we should let our viewers know. It's on people's minds right now, so go check out the show and learn more about the history of this. Come see the case in the museum and learn about that and all the other
Cool stuff.
wayfinding stuff from back then. So that really about wraps us up for tonight. We're out of time. We weren't really all over the map. We stayed in Mount Gretna a lot, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
But thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next month here on Motormouth on PCTV.
You know, I think that they're understanding that if they work hard, there's going to be results that come from that, and we saw some of that in the offseason.